Hey, it's Mark Lanier with your video thought for the day. Look at my little building mouse that someone gave me. He's got a shovel, handkerchief, overalls, ready to go to work. Speaking of going to work, this week I'm covering 5 new books of the Bible that I haven't covered before. They're not new books. They've been in there a long time. But 5 books of the Bible, trying to summarize them, give a memorable verse, give an application, and do it all in about 4 minutes or so. And today is the book of Haggai. And Haggai goes real well with my Build-A-Rat here. Because can you imagine if you returned home after decades of exile, only to find your city in ruins and the temple where you worshiped God totally destroyed? When you were faced, if this were the case, when you might be faced with the daunting task of rebuilding, where would you put your focus? Would you focus first on God's house, the temple, or on your own? Well, that's the central question that Haggai poses to a group of Jews who have returned from the Babylonian exile. And it's a question that's properly posed, in a sense, to us today. Now, the book of Haggai, let me start with a summary or a synopsis. It's one of the few books where we can definitively date when it was written. It was written in 520 BC. It's precisely dated with 4 specific messages delivered over a 4-month period. And the prophet addresses Jews who had returned from that Babylonian exile. They started rebuilding the temple, but they got discouraged and they stopped. Instead, they turned their focus toward building their dwelling places into luxurious homes, all while God's house still laid in ruins. So through Haggai's prophecies, God challenged their priorities, and he linked the economic struggles they were having at the time to their spiritual negligence. He promised future blessing if they would renew their obedience. The people responded positively, and work on the temple resumed. Now, despite the temple's modest appearance, God promised that its future glory would surpass that even of Solomon's temple. Their work wasn't in vain. Now let me give you a memorable verse out of Haggai. Haggai chapter 1 verses 4 and 5 says, "Is it time for you yourselves to dwell in your paneled houses?" That was a luxury then. "While this house," God's house, "lies in ruins? Now therefore, thus says the Lord of hosts, consider your ways." Think about it. This verse captures the book's central challenge about misplaced priorities and the need for self-examination, thinking things through. So how can we apply this? Well, I think Haggai calls us to examine our priorities and our investment of resources. Are we putting God's kingdom first? Or are we focused primarily on our own comfort and success, and God gets what's left over? The book reminds us that spiritual apathy often leads to personal dissatisfaction. But when we honor God first, other aspects of life tend to fall into place. It also encourages us not to despise small beginnings in God's works, because he brings great things from humble starts. So we can start even though we may not finish it, and know that God will. So like the returned exiles who face their own unfinished temple, we need to decide whether we'll prioritize God's kingdom or our own comfort. Haggai's message reminds us that true fulfillment and blessing comes from putting God's interests first, not our own. That's why I've made this your video thought for today.